Boy, it's been a wet, rainy day today. How about we make some dry beans and biscuits? Welcome back to the Four Seasons. I'm your host, Ken Johnson. Today it's been kind of wet and dreary, and so I decided to do a southern favorite. I'm going to do some dry lima beans with some biscuits and top them with some green onions. And this is just simple, poor country food at its finest. And it's wonderful for a day like today when you really don't want to get out and do much. And you just want something kind of simple and comforting. So stick around. So the first thing that we need for our dish is to give these onions a haircut. I've actually got two dishes I'll be doing over the next 2 days. I'm going to go ahead and cut the onions for this now. And so I just got a colander and I'm cutting the onions. Bluford, say hello to everybody. Oop, Dee Dee called him. Anyway, so we got the onions cut, so they got a haircut. You can see the radishes. So this will give the radishes room to get air, get some light, so that they can be growing. And then the onions, they'll stimulate them to grow more. They'll get bigger. So this is going to help out this whole container. So it does good to clip them off. Plus, I needed a good amount of onions for these two dishes that I'm doing. And so there you go. Okay, so for the lima beans, all you do is just take some scissors and just take your smallest green onions, or if you can get bunch onions, they're real small, just cut them up, a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch spacing. I remember back 80s, 90s, when you didn't have these scissors. I remember when they started becoming popular in the 90s. And they made life so much easier because you could just do this and just cut them with scissors. Otherwise, you just cut them with a knife. And if you can find some chiffonade scissors, they'll sometimes be called herb cutting scissors. It's multiple blades, you can cut with them. They're wonderful. For our recipe today, first thing we do is rinse and drain and cover a pound of large dry lima beans. And so these have not been soaked overnight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these to a boil for 2 minutes. I'm going to cover them, take them off the heat, and let them sit for an hour. This is a quick soak method, allows you to cook beans without having to soak them overnight. Something I will say about this: do not add salt. You just want fresh water. That's all you want. So when you're quick cooking, never add salt first. Okay, the 2 minutes are up. I'm going to just put a plate over it to lid it, because this plate does a better job than the lid I have. So this will sit now for an hour. An hour has passed, and you can see that these beans have almost doubled in size, if not just about tripled in size. So now what I'll do is I will pour these off into a colander. I won't show that, but I'll just pour them off into a colander and put fresh water over them, because you don't want to cook in this water. You want to put them in fresh water now to cook them. Okay, so I've added about 6 to 8 cups of water, more or less. In this, I'm going to turn it on high heat to bring it up to a boil. And then I'm gonna add some meat to this. I'll show you that in a minute. And then we'll reduce. Okay, so got the beans turned on high. I've got a package of smoked pork chunks. This is Kelly brand. They're out of Elby, Alabama. You'll notice that says Elba. Everybody that's from that area, they call it Elby. I used to hunt up in that area. Wonderful deer hunting. So I'll take this out of package, add it to the beans. Next thing, I'm adding some sea salt to taste. This is when you add your salt, not when you're soaking your beans, but as you're boiling the beans. So we'll add this in. And of course, the ham is going to have salt, but beans need a lot of salt. So even though you say, well, I don't need to salt it. Yes, you do need to salt it. And I find that sea salt makes vegetables taste better than traditional table salt. Even though salt is supposed to be all the same, it's not. Next, a little bit of pepper. And again, I always use Peppercorn medley grinder from McCormick's, which again, you can see that black peppercorn, coriander, pink peppercorns, white peppercorn, green peppercorn, allspice. Just has all those wonderful flavors. So this is a little bit more than just regular black pepper. Of course, this is just a taste. So that's, I just did a little bit there. You can always add, it's hard to take away. This just to give it a little bit of depth of flavor on the background. You still want the beans to shine, so this is not so much overpowering for it. Now we're going to bring this up to a boil, and then we'll cover and reduce down the temp. Now this right here, it's 2:56 in the afternoon. These are about to come up to a rolling boil. Once they get to a rolling boil, I'll reduce heat and allow them to cook for 2 hours. So that means you have to plan ahead when you're doing this old-timey cooking though. That's the thing about it. So when you're doing dry beans, make sure that you give them plenty of time to cook, because it's going to take every bit of 2 hours. I mean, we're probably going to eat maybe around 6 o'clock tonight. So you got to plan ahead when you're doing these southern meals. It's boiling now, so we're going to reduce the heat and cover. Okay, now, like I said before, these will now sit covered for about 2 hours. To start off with my biscuit recipe, I never buy buttermilk. So if you watched my browned mead recipe, I mentioned that I never buy buttermilk. I always make a faux buttermilk. And so first thing I do is take 1 cup of milk. To the 1 cup of milk, I'm going to put in just a few drops of rice vinegar. Can't talk today. I'm going to stir this up good, and I'm going to let it sit, because it has to have time to change the profile of this this milk and make it something similar to a buttermilk. Now, if you're from another country other than Canada or America, what we call here in America and Canada as buttermilk is nothing more than cultured milk. It is not what's left over after making butter. So this is not what you would think of maybe in your country as buttermilk. This is just cultured dairy. But what I'm doing is I'm foregoing the cultured dairy and I'm just using vinegar. Now I'm adding in 2 cups of flour and pouring in my cup of faux buttermilk. Now I'm pouring in a 1/3 cup of cooking oil. If you got lard, that's better, but we'll use cooking oil today. Now we're going to stir this up. These are not like the normal southern biscuits where you roll them up and you cut them out. This is what I call drop biscuits. My daddy, before he died, he used to call them cat head biscuits. And my buddy of mine, we made them all the time at the hunting camp. And he called mine cake biscuits because I do a little trick. He went to his grave thinking I didn't show him the trick. But it was really not a trick, I was just lazy. But I'm going to show it to y'all, and we're going to be making what Brady would call my cake biscuits. It's been raining today, and sometimes when it's raining outside, things can be a little bit too wet. So when it's dry, sometimes you need more moisture. When it's raining outside, sometimes you need to have more flour. In this case, I think I need more flour, so I'm going to add in a little bit more just to get consistency. I'm going to go about, I'd say about 1/4 cup to begin with, and then we'll add from there. Alright, so I'm going to show you this. See how that just kind of breaks off after you stir it a little bit? You just kind of lift up and it kind of breaks and it holds like that. That's what you need. Next, what we do is just dollop out spoonfuls of this. I'm using 2 spoons, but for this video I'm showing you how to do it with just 1 spoon, but I like to use 2 spoons when I can. So this is 8 biscuits on a buttered sheet tray. Now, here's the trick. You let them sit. How long do you let them sit? At least 30 minutes, if not longer. Why is that? Baking powder I have is, or not baking powder, the self-rising flour that I'm using has a baking soda element and a baking powder element. So if you let the water and the sour milk from the vinegar milk react with this first, a lot of the leavening will happen while it's nice and moist. And so this flour, first of all, I built up a lot of gluten. So I need to let this gluten rest. As it's resting, you got all this CO2 being created. It's lifting it up. It's getting the skin on top as well. Then when I put it in the hot oven, that steam is going to make it expand even more. And so you get a very soft, delicate, cake-like biscuit, very fluffy. It'll be nice and moist and tender. Everything you want to have a good southern biscuit. And that's my trick. Now we're going to pop these in the oven for 20 to 25 minutes. Ooh, those are gorgeous. Now we just need to take them and flip them over. And that's just so the bottoms don't get soggy. That's a little trick I learned a long time ago when I was a little boy. You always want to flip over your biscuits. And then let them sit for about a good 10 to 15 minutes. These are looking mighty fine. Now don't worry about these brownies here, these double fudge brownies, just ignore them. Now we're just going to go ahead and fill up our bowl with some dry lima beans. Some of that broth so you can put some biscuit in there, sop it up. And we'll garnish with some green onions from out of our garden. Now tell me that don't look like a bowl of deliciousness right there. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and if you will, please hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so that you can get future content. And I will see you again next time. Bye.